Election law is very niche. It's very specific. And that's one of the reasons why Trump wanted to call an election law expert as part of the defense case.
Yeah, this was quite a situation, and obviously one that everyone's eyes are on when you're dealing with Scottie Scheffler, the #1 golfer in the world. So here's why we see so much focus on this. So the body-worn camera, of course, has been a central issue nationwide.
As an attorney, what would you be advising if Corey Richens were your client?
I actually thought this was pretty interesting that this statement came at this time. Nicole, keep in mind her defense team just recently withdrew from the case due to a conflict of interest. So I imagine her defense team had told her previously, stay quiet. That's always the best advice, because come the time that you're actually in the courtroom at trial, any public statements that are made could absolutely come back to haunt you. Now, certainly the floodgates are open against Diddy. And oftentimes when you do see something like Cassie's lawsuit, which he categorically denied, and then this video comes out and suddenly he's issuing an apology when his feet are held to the fire, and it becomes very clear that at least some of the allegations in her lawsuit were true, that can incentivize others who were victimized to come forward. So the Turks and Caicos law is very, very severe. It's a 12-year mandatory sentence for having ammunition or a firearm in the luggage. And what I find interesting is that the ammunition that was actually found in the luggage of these Americans wasn't detected on the American side. So what I believe is happening from the defense perspective is basically a Hail Mary, that this video cannot be the only thing that the jury sees and hears about when it comes to Gregor from the defense perspective, and that essentially they're basically in a situation where his testimony is a last resort type of determination.
And so in most cases, jury instructions in New York and in every state, there's what's called pattern instructions. And so it's pretty well known what the instructions are ultimately going to say by both the defense and the prosecution. But in this case, because of the way that this case is actually stacked, you have the falsification of business documents in furtherance of another crime. You have a New York State election law statute that also requires an unlawful act. And then we have campaign finance violations. These jury instructions are going to be quite complicated.
So for the closing arguments, it's the roadmap that the jury is going to be looking at when they're in that deliberation room. It's the time for both sides to sum up their case. Of course, in this case, a lot of testimony, a lot of evidence, a lot of forensics for the prosecution. And there is a lot of the prosecution's case is actually circumstantial. It relates to this conspiracy between Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, who was Lori Vallow's brother, and Chad Daybell.
When you present to a grand jury, prosecutors need to show what's called probable cause. It's exactly what it sounds like. It means that the grand jurors are 51% sure, probable, that the individual committed the crime, that's the accused committed the crime, and that a crime was committed. And that standard is one of the lower standards in the law. It is much less than beyond a reasonable doubt, which you see when somebody goes to trial. So right now we're just at the precipice, stepping into that courtroom with jury selection. And when you have a case like this that is centered on documentation, the documents are going to tell a lot of the story. Some things to listen to and to listen for once the opening statements take place. And of course, that's after jury selection happens. The prosecutors will lay out their case in opening statements. Then the defense has the chance to speak and say their theory of the case, talk about how prosecutors have failed to fulfill their burden.